though, the relief room is about honoring Philly's relief in the place where ultimately you go for relief, right? So I'm going to go a little bit of a deep dive into how the relief room came to be, tell some stories about some interactions with players, but really it comes down to the stories of the players. So I'm going to share some of those too, and that's some of the most fun stuff. But first, I'll start with something that kind of frames this whole thing for me, and it just comes back to just being a fan and feeling like a 10-year-old kid again. Where if you told 10-year-old me that a Phillies World Series champion would be playfully photobombing a picture being taken of me and Don Carmen, I would have choked on my Wax Pax gum, right? Like that's stuff that wouldn't happen and you wouldn't dream of as a little kid. But this past October, it did happen, and it happened because of the relief room. So there's a teaser there that I'll tell that story in a little bit, but I'll tell you now just how the relief room got started. It's really a father-son thing. I go to opening day every day with my dad every year. We have season tickets. We go to spring training. There's not a time that we spend on the phone where we don't talk about the Phillies. That's still going on consistently, even though there's no Phillies baseball right now. It's anything we talk about, whether it's with my sons, whether it's with my it's always revolves around the Phils. So when we won the World Series in 2008, that was the first real World Series for me. I was 3 years old when we won in 08, so that doesn't really count for me. So 08 was my year, our year, and we all have our stories of that, as of how we celebrated that. And my dad and I called each other 3 or 4 times and just screamed into the phone to each other and didn't even know what to say. It was pretty cathartic. But from that, we went to the parade, we did all the stuff. Afterwards, the high didn't come down. Like, we were still just through the roof about the Phillies and about their winning. And so we just wanted to hang up, remember, see it all the time. And so my dad gets credit for actually starting the relief room. He printed out a picture, an old man that he is, he printed out the picture from the newspaper of Brad Lidge on his knees, Chooch embracing him. And he's like, I need to hang this up. Where can I hang this up? And well, we talked to Mom, and she's like, nowhere. You can go in the bathroom maybe. And so we hung that up, and I said, look, he's awful lonely there. You got to get Tug too. So Tug and Lidge were the first two in the relief room. And then if you fast forward a little bit, my wife and I bought the house that I grew up in. So I took over the relief room. To him and I was just kind of a joke. And then it just turned into, well, all right, we're going to make this more fun. And so it kind of became a real good time with my buddies. So whereas my best friend is probably on this, I think his name is Bort. And if you don't have a friend named Bort, you really should. He and I would go to the card shows, the Philly card show that comes every 4 times a year. We would go there all the time anyway, because we still collect. But once we had this idea, we had an agenda. We would go and just pour over the baseball cards, the 8x10s, any pictures we could find, just to find the funniest mustaches, the greatest backgrounds, the oldest, best looking uniforms, the windbreakers under the uniforms, all those different things. And then we would come back, and I would send a message out to all my buddies, just saying, here's what we found, here's why we chose this, a little story about the player. And it was fun. It just got to be a little bit of a goof between the fellas, to where my one buddy Ian was like, look, you've got to put this out somewhere. This is fun stuff. So I actually created a Tumblr page. I don't know if Tumblr is still a thing, but if it is, that's still out there somewhere. And so a lot of the rules come from my friends as well. Like I mentioned earlier, I do have rules in the relief room. There are presently 5 different Phillies relievers that are not welcome in the relief room. And they are Billy Wagner, Ricky Bottalico, J.C. Romero, Real Cormier, and that guy that came here from Boston that I won't tell you his name, but he's famous for grabbing his crotch here. Those are the 5 guys that are just not welcome in the relief room, and they all there's different reasons for each of them. There's one that I'm hedging on, and that's Real Cormier, and I'll tell a little bit more of that. But I have reasons for all of it, and it's my bathroom, it's my shrine. I get to make those rules, right? The other big rule that I have is called the Chad Durbin rule, and my friend James is responsible for this, because if you remember, Chad Durbin was on the '08 team. I met him the next year in spring training, had some beers with the guy. Like, he sat there and bought me a couple of Guinness. It was tremendous. He was a real good guy. But a couple years after the '08 team, he went to the Braves, bounced around, came back to the Phillies. I had already put a signed baseball of his in the relief room. But when he came back for his second tour with the Phils, if you remember, he stunk. He was awful. He was at the end of his line, and he was just giving up moonshot after moonshot. And my buddy James came over one day to watch a game and was like, "Look, if Durbin blows it again, I'm throwing that ball in the pool. Like, you can't have guys in here that are still active." That was the birth of the Chad Durbin rule. So I've bent that rule a couple times, but for the most part, you can't be an active player and be in the relief room. So and one thing I forgot to start with, I know Steve was doing a whole deep dive on the Hall of Fame. There you can see the relief room original class with, all of my guys. That's something I post on Twitter a good amount, but that's just one of the goofy things that I like to share. So on to Twitter, that's how really this whole thing took off. I was chatting with my buddies and my friend Mike Carroll, and he's the one. He and his brother Brian are two of the big proponents of getting me onto Twitter, just to get the stories out and share some more of this joy that I've got with this. So after hanging out with them, it was the fall of 2017, so just a couple years ago, and then New Year's of 18 is when I started with Twitter. I launched that, and really, I had a pretty quick response from players that were former Phillies or active Phillies that were on Twitter. Guys like Scott Air and Terry Adams and Josh Lindblom and David Herndon, Justin DeFreitas, Pat Neshek. I mean, those are guys that nobody is running up to get an autograph, except for me. Those are the guys that I want to talk to. I'm interested in Aaron Nola and Bryce Harper and Rhys Hoskins and all those guys too, but give me the Nesheks and the Herndons of the world, and that's the avenue I'm taking. So it worked out pretty well, just as far as me telling stories and those guys thinking it was pretty funny. I mean, it got to the point where Terry Adams, if you remember him, he came here as a starting pitcher. He had a decent year with the Dodgers the year before he came here. The Phillies threw a little money at him, and when he came here, he stunk. He was awful, and then he got salty about it. And he was burly with the fans, and he bristled at everything. And I remember not liking the guy at all. And I remember giving him the business every time I went down to the ballpark. And he asked me about that. Not me specifically, but he asked me on Twitter in a direct message about his reception here and how he was received and what he should have done differently. And one, I thought that was pretty emotionally mature of him. But it was just pretty cool that he was coming to me. For information on that. And it got to be like, I told him that, you come here, you kind of gotta bust your chops, right? Or you just gotta show that you're busting your chops and make the fans know that you're caring, that you give a rip about what's happening. And it was a real good conversation. It was really pretty neat. I mean, to the point where he sent a private video wishing my son a happy birthday when his birthday was canceled, and from COVID. And a couple guys did that. Josh Lindblom did that. Scott Air, Chris Coast, like, to a baseball fan, that was just very cool to have those guys reaching out and doing that thing. So speaking of Terry Adams, I'd mentioned Real Cormier is on my banned list, and he just recently passed away within the last year. I found out about that from Terry Adams. Terry Adams sent me a private message on Twitter that said, "Hey, did you hear about Real?" And I hadn't. And he told me, and he said that Turk Wendell had told Terry Adams, and then Terry Adams came and told me about that news. So just the whisper down the lane stuff there for your random 90s, 2000s Phillies relievers is something that I never thought I would be a part of, but here I was, and it's pretty much like he was giving me the first call, which was kind of blew me away. It was pretty cool. So then I went to the ALS Festival. If you guys know the Phillies Festival, you get to meet all the players. And again, I wasn't in line to go see the other guys. I was there to meet Tommy Hunter and Yeswell Valentin, because if you remember, Yeswell Valentin pitched in relief. That's another thing. Position players, if they get on the mound, Glenn Wilson, Andres Blanco, Wilson Valdez, the list goes on. They're in the relief room. So I don't stop with that. Which is pretty cool. Pat Neshek was really cool to me. He recognized me right away. I know a lot of people have a different opinion on Pat Neshek, but I was wearing a relief room t-shirt, and I'm wearing one now too. It's got teak on it, if you can see that. My buddy Mike Carroll makes me t-shirts. I've got 15, 20 different relief room t-shirts that are all one of one, that are awesome. So if you ever see anybody walking around with a relief room t-shirt at Citizens Bank Park, odds are it's me. But Pat Neshek was great. I introduced myself, which is weird to introduce myself as, hey, I'm the relief room. I'm the bathroom guy. But first thing, he's like, oh, you the guy? Thanks for being so cool to me. Which I just thought was a trip. I just, again, the fandom in me, I just felt like a little kid again. It was very neat. And speaking of those t-shirts, Greg Murphy has gotten to know me a little bit. That guy owes me a t-shirt still. I gave him a relief room t-shirt. He told me he was going to give me a minute with Murph shirt. Well, that ship has sailed. He doesn't do that anymore. So I guess I'm stuck without a shirt. But Murph knows he owes me one. So I've had good interactions with Scott Fransky and Larry Anderson too. Those guys are, as they are on the radio, they are great in person. I told LA that I had an 8x10 of him hanging in my bathroom, and he of course quipped perfectly, well, that's the perfect spot for it. But something that was great that I tell to my wife, my kids, my friends, my family, I also told to Scott Fransky, I don't let people call it my bathroom. Like, to the point where I'll ask my wife, like, hey, hon, where are the Band-Aids? And she's like, in the bathroom. I'm like, wait, which room? She's like, the bathroom. And I'll be overly dramatic and say, which room? To the point where she curses at it and goes, God, it's a GD relief room, okay? But to me, you gotta stay on brand with it. I can't have it be just the bathroom. So all of the relief room stuff is not all just Twitter interactions or meeting players or broadcasters. I mean, as much as I revel in those, I think the base of it, what the relief room really is, it's nothing without the players, without the stories, the pictures, the baseball cards, the people that write the stories. I mean, I and really anybody that loves baseball owes you guys a debt of gratitude. The Society of American Baseball Research. I've done so much digging into some of the stuff that you guys have written that I wouldn't have a lot of the information that I have about these relievers without your stories. I mean, there was a guy that follows me on Twitter that said, I think the relief room knows more about Phillies relief pitchers than anyone knows about anything, which, one, is very flattering, two, is pretty funny. But three, I couldn't be close to true without the stuff that you do. So thank you for that. I appreciate the things that you guys do more than you appreciate the mustache jokes that I make. And really, I mean, the stories are what makes this work. I mean, I'm still going to tell mustache jokes, right? I'm still going to tell them over and over again. But it's the players, really, right, that resonate with all of us. They're at the center of it. We think about the sounds and the smells, and that's all part of the nostalgic pull for us, for baseball fans. But it's the players that we go and we check out, right? So I want to give you a little bit of a dive into just a handful of some of my favorite players. And it's just a snippet of each one, but it's guys that maybe you heard of, maybe you watched when you were younger, and there's just stories about them outside of baseball that to me just blow my mind. Like, Joe Horner. Anybody remembers Joe Horner? He pitched for the Phils in the 70s. He was in the Curt Flood trade. That right there puts him in a different echelon of baseball history. The last pitch he threw in a Major League Baseball game hit the batter. The batter charged. They had a little Donnybrook, and he was thrown out. So the last pitch he ever threw in Major League Baseball got him thrown out, which that to me, I kind of love that story of him. He also cheated death on several occasions. The guy was he had dizzy spells on the mound one time. He fell, he collapsed. Like, he was administered last rites at the hospital, and came back. And like a week later, he was back on the mound. He was in a unfortunate, fatal boating accident. He and some family members were, struck another boat. Some other people died. He couldn't swim. He fell into the water after the collision and damn near drowned. Just stuff like that just fascinates me. Just the backstories of some of these guys. And the ironic thing is, he cheated death so many times, he got killed in a farming accident. He got pinned by a tractor. Like, that's a crummy way to die. But those are the kind of things. I mean, I got pictures of him just wearing silly hats, and he looks like the happiest go lucky guy. And here he cheated death a couple times. Tom Hilgendorf is another guy that's a big favorite of mine. If you look at me at Twitter at all, I I rant and rave about my love for Tom Hilgendorf all the time. You don't know much about that guy, right? He didn't pitch for all that long. He was only here for one season, his last season in Major League Baseball. He was integral in the infamous 10-cent beer night. He's the guy, you've seen the famous picture of the policeman walking off with the guy with a bloody towel to his head. That's Tom Hilgendorf. He got whacked with a metal chair at 10-cent beer night. That right there, again, that's in the fabric of the history of baseball. And the greatest thing about that is, okay, it's an iconic picture. The next game that they played, he was on the mound, pitched 2 innings, faced the minimum, got them all out. 6 up, 6 down. That's just awesome stuff. He also, when he was, I think this was when he was with Cleveland as well, they were traveling to Anaheim and they had a day game. He went back to the pool at the hotel afterward. There was a little boy at the bottom of the pool drowning. Hilgendorf just dove right in, full clothes, right to the bottom of the pool, pulled the kid out, rescued him, saved him. Like, he was credited with saving that kid's life. So he's defeating, throngs of drunk fans. He's saving drowning children. I read a story, I don't know how true it is or not, but I choose to believe it. He was pitching in I think it was the Venezuelan league somewhere in South America in the off season, and a monkey bit his kid, and he had a bat and he just brained the monkey. And so just stuff like that too. It's just that life stuff. The coolest thing about Tom Hilgendorf is you guys all know Dick Perez he's done a million things in baseball, the Diamond King cards and the Donruss in the 80s, 100 different things. He's a local guy here. And my friend Bort, again, reached out to him and was like, hey, look, I see this Tom Hilgendorf on your website here. Any way you'd be interested in donating that to the relief room, here's the story. Dick Perez sent me a personalized message that was warm and wonderful and just felt like everybody's grandpa, and just told me how cool of an idea he thought the relief room was, and donated his Tom Hilgendorf drawing to me. So it hangs in the relief room. It's one of my prized possessions. How cool is it that Dick Perez thought that my silly little bathroom was a good idea and neat enough to send that to me? So just the stories of that, just I can't get enough of that. Like, what a story. Toby Borland is one of my favorite guys. He wasn't all that great. He was decent. He was the last Philly to ever wear number 42 after they grandfathered that for retiring it for Jackie Robinson. Obviously, Mariano Rivera was the last notable player to wear that. Toby Borland was the last Philly player to wear that. And Toby Borland fits right into my wheelhouse as far as the mustache jokes go, right? That guy, every single baseball card that guy has, to me, is a 10. He hasn't missed on any of it. Like, every one, he's making a funny face. He's got the great John Waters mustache. Everything about that guy to me is a home run. But it's not just the 42. It's not just the crazy mustache stuff that I joke about. Toby Borland's dad is a baseball scout. Toby Borland's dad, the baseball scout, scouted Blake Parker, who was recently in the news for the Angels stuff with the narcotics, which is a shame, but he played for the Phils. Blake Parker was scouted by Toby Borland's dad. Just that interweaving stuff and those stories, that's the kind of stuff that I love. The cup of coffee stuff, the guys that played one single game in Major League Baseball. There's, as far as relief room members, there's a handful of them. There's Tyson Brummett. There's Erskine Thomason, which my friend made me an Erskine Thomason mug right there with his beautiful face on it and just says, enjoy your cup of coffee. I mean, the Erskine Thomason cup of coffee thing is just gold to me. There was Larry Colton and Dick Thonen had one major league game in their career, and they were both on a Topps rookie card together. I think it was 1967. I'd have to confirm that, but they're both on a rookie card. They both pitched one game in their major league life. That's just random and weird. That's very unique. And Larry Colton went on, after his one game, went on to write several books. He wrote about the Portland Trailblazers team that won the championship in the late 70s. He traveled with Bill Walton and wrote a whole book on that. The guy got nominated for a Pulitzer. He created literary festivals. He married Hedy Lamar's daughter. Like, just crazy cool stuff like that just resonates. That's the stuff I celebrate. Like, just that it's the stuff, that the quirky stuff. Bronson Heflin spent 6 days in Major League Baseball. He got into 3 games, but he was there for less than a week, and that was it. So it's guys like that. And so when it comes to the people of the relief room and the stories and the interactions, my favorite is Scott Air. He and I got along right away on Twitter. He thinks I'm funny. I think he's a legend, of course, for his role in the '08 team. I would tag him in something on Twitter, and before you know it, him and other former players, Chris Coast and Glendon Rush, and just other guys, we're all just having conversations, and I'm just sitting there giggling, again, feeling like a little kid. Like, here I'm chatting with these guys. And then the unthinkable, at least for me, the unthinkable happened. The ultimate relief room story: Scott Air came to visit the relief room. He was in town for a card show, the signing at a card show, the same card shows that Bort and I go to every time. And I invited him to come, and he accepted. And the coolest part for me, or even, if it could be any cooler, it was on my birthday. It was on my birthday in 2020. So I figured that Scott Air would come over and spend 30, 40 minutes, sign a couple things, tell a couple stories, and peace out. Not the case. He was here for hours. We went through like everything in the relief room, and he was great. He was pointing out guys and telling stories about them. I played with that guy in the minors. That guy was my coach, and he had something about every single guy. And then we just started ripping open random wax packs and going through that. And that was awesome. Because then he had stories about those guys. Oh, I struck this guy out on this pitch, or oh, this guy went yard off of me. And he just kept telling stories about it. He even ate the gum that was 30 years old. It was just like hanging out with one of my buddies. It was the coolest darn thing. So I don't think I never had a birthday gift that cool before, and I don't know if I ever will again. That was pretty special. And so that kind of leads into what I started with, right? When I was telling that story about Don Carmen and getting photobombed by the Phillies World Series champ, which of course was Scott Air, because of course it was, photobombing me and Don Carmen. But I'll get back to Scott Air in just a minute. Don Carmen for a second. I had an appreciation for him at an early age. Like, cause I started collecting cards in the 1984, 1985 range. So my prime of baseball card collecting was Don Carmen's playing prime. And my sister, who was a year older than me, was in love with Don Carmen just because he was handsome. And from meeting him this fall, I can tell you he's still handsome. But she made sure that every card of Don Carmen that I collected, I gave to her. So she needed to make sure she lined her mirror with all the Don Carmen cards that would keep all of her John Bon Jovi pictures company. So sure enough, I collected all these cards and gave them to her, and I just collected doubles of every one. So I made sure I still had mine. Side note, when I met Don Carmen, I got a picture of him. I had it blown up to an 8x10 size. And then I had I made a frame of all of 16 different Don Carmen baseball cards around it, and gave that to my sister for Christmas this year. And I told her she had to hang it in her kitchen for at least a calendar year, which she agreed to before knowing what it was, which was great. So I made a Don Carmen frame to frame a picture of Don Carmen and me to give to my sister. Like that kind of stuff too. Again, that just the fan in me loves that kind of stuff. So I met Don Carmen at this celebrity bartending event that was in Philadelphia. It was the Darren Dalton Foundation, and that's where I saw Scott Air again as well. Scott Air reached out to me and said, "Hey, look, I'm coming up to this thing to bartend. Are you coming?" And the irony of this one, it was on the weekend of my wife's birthday. So here he was in 2020 on my birthday, and now he was coming up on my wife's birthday. And so I told her, I said, "Hey, look, we got to go." And she agreed. I think she likes Scott Air more than I do. Even they got along great as well. So one of the coolest things, Scott Air, all the players that were there were wearing their uniforms, their old jerseys, just so you would know who was who. You'd see Ricky Jordan and Milt Thompson and all these different guys. It was neat. It was great to meet all those guys. Dave Hollins, Randy Wolf on Hayes. I mean, I still love meeting those guys, even though they weren't relief pitchers. But it's so cool. Scott Air wore number 47, and my wife turned 47. And so she told him that, and he just took his shirt off and gave it to her, put it on her, made her wear it. And then at the end of the night, she's like, "Here, thanks for that was awesome." And he's like, No, that's yours now. That's your shirt. And it was just the neatest thing. I tried to go hang it in my closet next to my Mario Holland's game worn jersey, and she's like, nah, that's mine, pal. You can look at it when you go past my closet. You don't get that. So, and Scott was wearing a Relief Room t-shirt. My friend Mike had made an extra and given it to him. So that was just so cool. I was there. There was somebody wearing my shirt at an event with all these other guys. It was just the coolest thing. So that's the kind of stuff, those odd stories, those interactions, like that's the kind of stuff that really does it for me. The humanity of it, the sharing of it, it's a fun story to tell as a Phillies fan. So that's what really connected me to baseball. That's what really connects me to the fans, to the players. I mean, who doesn't love being down at the ballpark when somebody hits a home run or gets a big strikeout, and you're hugging strangers at the park. Like, I can't wait to get back to that. I miss that. That community is really what makes it. So it doesn't matter really whether you choose your passion to focus on sluggers or aces or different eras of baseball or relief pitchers or whatever it is. It's the connection and that passion to the people that makes it all work. And I think that's really the best part of the Relief Room, and that's the part that I enjoy the most, is telling these stories about these players and then getting to interact with them and learn even more about it. And that's the real thrill for me. So that's the dive into the Relief Room. I thanks for listening and allowing me to be here. Like, I want to open it up to questions, anything else you want to know about or ask me about, or if you want to just see like commemorative Tug McGraw 7-Up plates that I have. I mean, so thank you again. And what questions are there or anything like that?
Yeah, Matt, is Mike Zagurski in the Relief Room?
Absolutely. He absolutely is. And Scott Air had a couple of amazing stories to tell me about him, which was great. So yeah, I've got over 300 inductees into this tiny little bedroom.
Are we talking powder room?
It's a powder room. Okay. It is. It's tiny. Really small. Yeah. But it's a living, growing thing because baseball doesn't stop, right? There's going to be relievers for the next however many years. So as long as I want to keep going with this, it's a growing organism. I can change it and do it as much as I'd like. And luckily, I haven't done anything with the ceiling yet, so I've got all of that space still.
Do you ever see yourself expanding to a second Relief Room?
That conversation has come up many, many times because the Relief Room is the powder room right off of the laundry room. And we've had some homeowner changes recently, and my wife is like, well, why don't we put the washer and dryer in the basement and then we can open up this room? And I was like, well, if we open up that room, we're opening it up to make a bigger Relief Room. I can hang game used jerseys there and not just baseball cards and 8x10s and signed balls. And she's like, we'll get there, pal, you're adorable. So she kind of pats me on the head and says, yeah, right.
Have any of the 5 banned players, relief pitchers, reached out to find out why they're banned?
They have not. I have interacted a number of times with Ricky Bottalico in person and online, and he kind of he pretty much summarizes why I don't like him when I meet him or talk to him. He's kind of a bully, and he kind of has the "well, get out of your mom's basement" mentality, that kind of thing. So I think he knows why he's not welcome.
And one other quick question. He was a starter primarily. I think he did make a few relief appearances, but perhaps the most famous relief appearance in Philadelphia history is one of them is Dick Ruthven for the 1980. I know you said you're only 3, but 1980 winning that Game 5 to clinch the pennant. So he belongs there if he's not.
Sure, that's so for that moment, he does belong there. I look at the overall scope of his career, and again, mostly a starter. So I ebb and flow with that because arguably, one of the top pitchers in Phillies history is Robin Roberts, not a relief pitcher. Obviously, that era of playing, they did both, but I have him in the Relief Room, and he was primarily a starter, and that's mostly because I knew him personally. When I was a teenager, I worked at the golf course that he owned in Ambler, Pennsylvania, and he was just the nicest, kindest man, and he remembered everyone's name, and he came up and made sure to ask about, your family. I was 16 years old. So I've got a connection to him, but he's in. But for the most part with starters, it's got to be a big moment, like you mentioned with Ruthven. It's got to be something special, because for the most part, the starters are not in.
Yeah, you mentioned that Scott Ayers spent a couple hours at the house. By any chance, did he use the facilities in the relief room?
He absolutely did.
Put black on the door.
He absolutely did, and we kept making jokes about that, like, "What do we take that toilet seat off now?" You know. But that's a little grimy. I don't need to go that far. I can make potty jokes, but I don't need the real dirty, toilet seats. But I did have him sign. One of my friends he does a lot of stuff with old furniture and reconditions furniture, and so he painted a toilet seat for me and had the relief room printed on it. And when you open it up, it has a picture of Al Holland on it, because Al Holland's my avatar on Twitter, and he's making a perfect face for a bathroom. He's just kind of curling his nose up, and it's the perfect face for what you would make in the bathroom. It looks like it just smelled something terrible. Anyway, I don't use that toilet seat, but I had Scott Air sign it. And so that's going to be my I guess my talisman, almost my good luck charm. Anybody that comes to the relief room that's a former player gets to sign that toilet seat.
Anything else? Dennis?
Yeah, Matt, a couple quick questions. So one is, who is the oldest, I guess going back furthest in baseball, who is the oldest that you have in the relief room?
I have a George McQuillan card. It's a 1909, I believe it is.
Impressive. Wow.
Which is awesome. And one of my friends gave that to me. And that guy's amazing. Read that guy's story. The first paragraph of that story is the greatest thing I've read. It just starts off calling him the Doc Gooden of the dead ball era. And just because of how he burst onto the scene as an amazing rookie, and then he just got caught in the web of sordid drugs and prostitutes and alcoholism. It's an amazing story. But George, I think, is my oldest card.
And my other question is, have you ever thought about if you start running out of room, rotating some things in and out, like art museums do sometimes?
I rotate stuff all the time in and out because I have friends, and my group of buddies give me stuff all the time. My friends, the Carroll brothers, you see me ramble about them a lot on Twitter. They send me stuff monthly, like all the time. They find the neatest, coolest things, game use stuff, like just the craziest things. And so I do that. I am cycling things through, and then fans on Twitter will send me a message like, "Hey, I just came across this. Would you like it?" And sometimes it's like a signed card by Brad Lidge. I'm like, hell yeah, I want that. I mean, sometimes it's just another Dan Schatzeder card, and I have all the Dan Schatzeder cards, many of them, because you can't beat that guy's mustache. But I have done that. I have cycled things through, and because every time I get a new inductee, I have to change some things in there because there's just stuff that doesn't quite fit, or I had put stuff in a certain order, and now I have different size things I have to change. So it's constantly changing. So the pictures that I send out on Twitter might be the active picture that's in the relief room, or it might have been the last one or the last two ago. So I do that. I think that's a fun part of it.
Yeah, Matt, can you put up your coffee cup of Erskine Thomason again? Yeah, I'm under the tag Fongo 2008 on Twitter, and you told me about this guy, and I've made a disposable coffee cup of him, and I have it here today, so people want to take a look at it. I have a couple of my disposable coffee cups. Thank you for putting that up.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll tell you what, the Twitter community has been amazing. I know people have their problems with that, the keyboard warriors and stuff, but from what I've found, there are just amazing people out there, and they all just want to share and commiserate in this Phillies fandom stuff. It's the coolest. It's my favorite part of this, is being able to interact with all the other people. And like Steven, you started at the beginning, you're in Warminster. We're neighbors, man. I'm in Hatboro. Like you're around the corner. Like it's just the coolest thing. People have dropped stuff off in my mailbox. It's just awesome. So I love that community part of it. Thank you for that.
Anybody at home with any questions? Anybody else?
Where in Hatboro?
Where in Hatboro? Right off of Meeting House Road.
I'm off of York Road, Summit, York Road. Daddy Pop's Diner.
That's great.
Matt, did you used to go to the Philadelphia Athletics Historical Society when that was there?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. I didn't get to go there as much as I wanted. It was just in an era of my life when I didn't live locally here. I came back to this spot, but I got in there a handful of times, just not as much as I wanted. It was awesome.
One last question.
What's your beef with Real Cormier? By all accounts, he's like the nicest guy ever.
The nicest guy ever. You know what it was? It was the dumbest thing. I was in my 20s and me and the fellows would go down to the ballpark and, you know, have a little loudmouth soup. And he was like a lot of relievers and a lot of left-handed relievers. He was either great or terrible. And he had a stretch where he was just god awful. And I gave him the business on a number of occasions, which I've matured out of, I think, a little bit. But it just got to be a joke. Like every time we see this guy, he stinks. And so then it just became a joke. And so he's the one, because Scott told me this, and a couple of Scott's friends that he made at the fantasy camp that I've become friends with, Dan and Dave, they've told me as well. Real's the greatest guy in the world. Like there was nobody has a single bad thing to say about him. So I am, in fact, I am planning on removing him from the banned list and having a posthumous induction. And I might do that right around his birthday. His birthday is coming up this spring, so I'm planning on that because I have to atone for that, because all accounts is he was dynamite, and I can't keep him out just for stinking a couple times.
All right. Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it. The first presentation.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
That was great.